My name is Catherine Walsh. I'm 48 years old, and until this morning, I was the founder and CEO of a mid-sized logistics software company called Summit Tech. I spent 15 years building it from absolutely nothing. Just me, a laptop, and a dream that refused to die. This morning, I walked into that sleek boardroom on the 9th floor believing we'd discuss quarterly projections and maybe argue about marketing budgets. I was completely wrong. The meeting started normal enough. Coffee was poured. Laptops opened. Small talk about the weather and weekend plans filled the air like it always did. Then Marcus Brennan, the board chairman, cleared his throat. He slid a thick legal document across the polished oak table toward me. The paper made a soft scraping sound that somehow felt loud in the sudden silence. "Catherine," he said, not meeting my eyes. "We've made a difficult decision." My stomach dropped before my brain could catch up. Effective immediately, the board has voted to remove you as CEO of Summit Tech. His voice was flat, rehearsed. Security is outside to escort you out. Your access will be revoked within the hour. I stared at the document. My name. Legal signatures. Official stamps. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned weeks ago, maybe months. I looked around the table. Every single person avoided my gaze except one, Derek Cole, the CEO I'd personally promoted 3 years ago. He stared at his laptop screen like it held the secrets of the universe. He knew this was coming. Security didn't touch me, but they followed close behind as I walked back to my office. Employees stopped typing. Conversations died mid-sentence. Everyone watched me pass like I was a ghost already. I opened my office door, the one with my name still on it, and started packing. Photos. A few books. My favorite coffee mug that said, "Built, not born." 15 years in a cardboard box. My computer screen suddenly went black. Access revoked. My email shut down mid-sentence while I was trying to forward something personal to myself. They timed it perfectly. I carried the box down the hallway. Nobody said goodbye. Nobody said anything. The silence was worse than the vote. In the elevator, my phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer, Francine. Asterisk, say nothing to anyone. You're still protected. Call me when you're clear. Asterisk. Protected? From what? The elevator doors opened to the lobby. I walked out into the bright morning sunlight, holding everything I owned from Summit Tech in a single cardboard box. 5 years earlier, Summit Tech was dying. We'd just lost our 2 biggest clients in the same month. Payroll was due in 3 days, and our bank account couldn't cover it. Investors had ghosted us. Creditors were circling like vultures. I sat in this same building, back when it wasn't ours yet, staring at spreadsheets that all said the same thing. We were finished. My then-husband told me to fold the company and move on. "Cut your losses, Katie," he'd said over dinner. "You gave it a shot." No shame in that. But I couldn't. This wasn't just a company to me. It was proof that I could build something real, something lasting. So I made a decision that nobody knew about except my lawyer and my accountant. I mortgaged everything I had, my savings, my retirement, even my car, and I made one massive, terrifying bet. I bought the building. Not through Summit Tech. Through a private holding company I created called Anchor Properties LLC. Then I leased the building back to Summit Tech at a rate so low it was basically charity. It saved the company. It saved jobs. Nobody asked questions because they were just grateful to survive. Nobody ever asked who owned the building. 3 years ago, I promoted Derek Cole to Chief Operating Officer. He was charming in that smooth, practiced way. Always said the right thing in meetings. Smiled at the right moments. Laughed at board members' jokes, even when they weren't funny. I ignored the whispers. A few senior staff warned me he was ambitious in a dangerous way. One VP told me bluntly, "He's collecting allies, Catherine. Watch your back." I defended him. I believed in him. I thought loyalty was a two-way street. I made him powerful because I trusted him to use that power wisely. Now, sitting in my quiet apartment with that cardboard box on my kitchen counter, I replayed every conversation, every meeting, every decision. Derek had been positioning himself for months, maybe longer. He'd networked with board members, taken them to dinners I wasn't invited to, built relationships with investors. Slowly, carefully, he'd made himself indispensable while painting me as stuck in the past, and I'd been too busy actually running the company to notice. The cash crisis from 5 years ago still haunted me some nights. I remembered sitting across from 3 different banks, begging for a loan to keep Summit Tech alive. They all said no. Too risky. Too unstable. Too much debt already. I'd walked out of that last bank meeting knowing I had one option left. Bet everything on myself. Buying the building wasn't just a financial move. It was a lifeline. I found a property owner willing to sell, an older man retiring to Florida who just wanted a clean, fast deal. I drained every account I had, took out a personal loan that made my accountant wince, and closed the purchase in 11 days. Then I set up the lease agreement. Summit Tech could rent the building at 30% below market rate. The contract included standard terms, renewal clauses, and timelines. I buried it in paperwork. Made it look routine. Nobody on the board ever thought to ask who owned Anchor Properties LLC. Why would they? They assumed it was just another landlord. That one decision, made in desperation and fear, was about to become the most important move I'd ever made. Back in the present, the silence after my removal was deafening. No phone calls. No emails. No text messages asking if I was okay. The company issued a brief internal announcement. Catherine Walsh has decided to pursue other opportunities. We thank her for her service and wish her well. Decided. Like it was my choice. I watched from my couch as employees posted on social media. Exciting changes ahead at Summit Tech. One person even used a party emoji. Derek posted a photo from the boardroom, my old seat, with the caption, "New chapter. New vision. Let's build the future." 400 likes in an hour. I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling. They'd erased me like I never existed. 15 years reduced to a polite sentence and a fake smile. But I wasn't angry yet. I was numb, hollow, trying to process what had just happened. The anger would come later. 2 weeks after my removal, my phone buzzed with a private number. It was Naomi Chen. Wait, no, it was Naomi Hartley, one of the VPs I'd mentored for years. Her voice was shaky. "Catherine, I shouldn't be calling you." "Then why are you?" I asked. "Because everything's falling apart." She told me the truth nobody wanted to admit publicly. Projects were stalling, deadlines were being missed, and Derek had no idea how to actually run operations. He was great at talking, terrible at executing. "People are panicking," Naomi whispered. "Half the senior team is updating their resumes." "What do you want me to do about it?" I asked, sharper than I meant to. Silence. "I can't help you anymore, Naomi." They made sure of that. "I know," she said quietly. "I just thought you should know." After she hung up, I sat with that information. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sad. But I meant what I said. I couldn't help them anymore. And honestly, I didn't want to. Weeks crawled by. I heard things. Rumors. Whispers from people still inside Summit Tech who reached out quietly, nervously, like they were passing state secrets. A major client threatened to leave because Derek botched a presentation. The product roadmap was a mess. Team morale was tanking. Investors were asking uncomfortable questions about leadership stability. I did absolutely nothing. I didn't gloat. I didn't interfere. I just watched from the outside as the company I built started cracking under pressure it wasn't ready for. Then one afternoon, my phone lit up with a message from Derek himself. "Hey Catherine, hope you're doing well. Coffee sometime? Would love to catch up." Casual. Friendly. Fake as plastic fruit. I stared at the message for a full minute, then put my phone face down on the table. He wanted something. And I wasn't going to make it easy. I pulled out the lease agreement I'd signed 5 years ago and read it carefully. Every word. Every clause. Every timeline. The lease was airtight. Professional. Legal. Clean. Summit Tech's current lease term would expire in 90 days. Renewal required 60 days notice and mutual agreement from both parties. There was one clause buried on page 7 that most people skimmed over. The landlord, me through Anchor Properties, had the right to negotiate new terms or decline renewal entirely if the tenant underwent significant structural or leadership changes. That clause existed to protect me if Summit Tech was ever sold or taken over. It also applied now. Derek and the board had triggered it the moment they voted me out. They just didn't know it yet. I closed the document and made myself a cup of tea, feeling the first real smile I'd had in weeks pull at my lips. They forgot who owned the building. Summit Tech announced a major expansion plan. New hires. New office floors. A whole rebrand with a sleek new logo, and a press release talking about bold new leadership driving innovation forward. Derek's face was on the homepage. Confident. Smiling. Standing in front of floor-to-ceiling windows in the building I owned. They'd hired contractors. Signed vendor agreements. Committed money to renovations and new furniture. But nobody had secured the building long-term. 3 days later, I received a formal email from Summit Tech's legal department. Dear Anchor Properties LLC, we are writing to request a lease extension for our headquarters located at 1550 Commerce Drive. Please confirm receipt and advise on next steps. I read it twice. Polite. Professional. Assuming I'd just agree because why wouldn't I? I took my time crafting a response. Thank you for reaching out. I've received your request and will need time to review my options. I'll be in touch within 30 days. Short. Calm. No commitments. I hit send and waited. Panic started immediately. Naomi texted me again. Catherine, what's happening with the lease? I didn't respond. Another VP called and left a voicemail. We heard you own the building? Is that true? Can we talk? I deleted it. Derek sent another message, less casual this time. Hey, we need to discuss the property situation. Can we set up a call? I left him on read. Inside Summit Tech, I heard through back channels that people were freaking out. Contractors were asking questions. The CFO was demanding answers. The board was suddenly very interested in who owned Anchor Properties LLC. And when they finally traced it back to me, the real chaos began. One board member, a man named Harrison Ford, no relation to the actor, called me directly. Catherine, he said, trying to sound calm. We need to talk. Off the record. There is no off the record anymore, I replied. You made sure of that. Please. Just hear me out. I hung up. They were starting to understand what they'd done. Derek was unraveling. According to Naomi, who still checked in despite my warnings, Derek was micromanaging everything and trusting no one. Meetings that used to take 30 minutes now stretched to 2 hours because he second-guessed every decision. People started quitting. 3 senior engineers left in 1 week. 2 account managers followed. The company I'd spent 15 years building was bleeding talent, and Derek had no idea how to stop it. He'd been great at schmoozing board members and looking good in photos. But actually running a company? He was drowning. And without me there to cover for his gaps, everyone could see it. Then Harrison Ford called me again. This time I answered. Catherine, I'm calling as a friend, not a board member. You're not my friend, Harrison. Fair enough. He sighed. Look, things are difficult right now. The team needs stability. Would you consider stepping in quietly? Just to help smooth things over. I almost laughed. I don't have authority anymore, Harrison. You voted me out. Remember? What would it take to bring you back? That question hung in the air like smoke. Before I could answer Harrison, a memory hit me. The night before the vote, I'd been working late. I'd walked past the boardroom and heard voices. Low. Serious. I'd stopped outside the door. She's too emotionally attached to the old way of doing things, someone had said. I recognized the voice. It was Thomas Lang, one of the board members. We need someone who can scale aggressively, another voice added. Derek's ready. I'd stood there, frozen, as they discussed removing me like I was a broken piece of equipment. Then Derek's voice, quieter than the others. I think she'd understand. Eventually, he'd known. He'd been part of it. And nobody, not one person in that room, had defended me. I'd walked away that night telling myself I was being paranoid, that I'd misheard. But I hadn't. Now, with Harrison on the phone asking what it would take, I felt that betrayal all over again. Catherine, Harrison prompted. Are you there? I'm here, I said coldly. And my answer is no. I hung up before he could respond. Summit Tech's board sent me a formal offer 2 days later. They wanted me to return as a special consultant to provide strategic guidance during the transition period. No title. No real authority. Just my expertise for a fraction of what I used to make. I read the offer letter 3 times, then wrote my response. I declined the consulting role. Instead, I sent them a counteroffer, a full buyout of my equity stake in Summit Tech at a valuation that reflected what the company was actually worth, not the inflated number they'd been telling investors. The number was high. Very high. I attached a simple note. This is my price for walking away completely. Take it or leave it. I sent it at 9 p.m. on a Friday. By Monday morning, I heard Derek had exploded in a closed-door meeting. He'd apparently thrown a coffee mug against the wall and shouted that I was trying to destroy everything we built. Everything we built. That almost made me laugh. The next few weeks were brutal for Summit Tech. 2 investors pulled out, spooked by the instability. A key product launch got delayed because the engineering team was in chaos. Vendors started demanding payment up front because they didn't trust the company's leadership. And the lease? Still unresolved. With 60 days until expiration and no signed extension, Summit Tech's entire expansion plan was collapsing. The board called an emergency meeting. This time, they formally invited me to attend. I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see their faces. I walked into that same boardroom where they'd voted me out. No security this time. No legal documents sliding across the table. Just 10 very uncomfortable people sitting in expensive chairs, looking smaller than I remembered. Derek sat at the head of the table, my old seat. He didn't look confident anymore. He looked exhausted. Harrison gestured to an empty chair. Catherine, thank you for coming. I didn't sit. I stood at the end of the table and placed a folder down. The lease agreement. Let's talk about the building, I said calmly. I explained everything slowly, clearly, like I was teaching a class. The lease expires in 43 days. Renewal requires mutual agreement. The leadership change clause gives me the right to renegotiate or decline entirely. You planned an expansion without securing the building, I said, looking directly at Derek. That was a mistake. Thomas Lang leaned forward. Catherine, we can work something out. Name your terms. I already did, I replied. You rejected them. The buyout offer was unreasonable, Derek snapped. Was it? I asked. Or do you just not want to admit what this company is actually worth without me? Silence. I let it sit there, heavy and uncomfortable. You have 2 options, I said finally. Option 1, buy me out at my price and find a new building. Option 2, reinstate me as CEO with full authority, remove Derek, and we negotiate a fair lease extension. The room erupted. Derek stood up, face red. You can't do this. I can, I said calmly. And I am. Harrison held up a hand. Everyone, please. Let's take a breath. But there was no breath left to take. The damage was done. They asked for a recess. 30 minutes to discuss privately. I waited in a conference room down the hall, drinking terrible coffee from the machine I used to complain about fixing. When they called me back, the energy had shifted. Derek wasn't in the room anymore. Harrison spoke first. We've decided to accept option 2. You'll be reinstated as CEO, effective immediately. Derek Cole's employment has been terminated. I kept my face neutral, but inside, my heart was racing. There are conditions, Thomas added quickly. We want quarterly reviews, board oversight on major decisions, and a clear succession plan within 2 years. Agreed, I said. On one condition of my own, I choose my leadership team. No interference. They looked at each other. Nodded. Deal. We shook hands. It felt nothing like victory. It felt like cleaning up a mess I shouldn't have had to clean up in the first place. I walked out of that building and sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands shaking. I'd won. Technically. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. I drove home, poured a glass of wine, and stared out the window at the city lights. Then I opened my laptop and started writing an email to my lawyer. Francine, I need you to draft a buyout agreement. I'm leaving Summit Tech for good. I returned to Summit Tech the next week. Temporarily. Employees looked relieved, hopeful. Naomi actually hugged me in the hallway. Thank God you're back. But I wasn't back. Not really. I spent 6 weeks stabilizing everything. Fixed the broken projects. Calmed the investors. Rebuilt trust with clients. I hired a new COO, someone I actually trusted this time. Then I called another board meeting. I'm executing the buyout, I said. You'll pay my price and I'll walk away clean. You keep the company. I keep my dignity and my future. Thomas looked stunned. But you just came back. I came back to fix your mess, I replied. Now I'm leaving on my terms. Harrison nodded slowly. If that's what you want. It is. The buyout took 30 days to finalize. When the wire transfer hit my account, I sat in my apartment and cried. Not sad tears, relieved ones. I was free. Summit Tech sent out a press release. Catherine Walsh transitions to new opportunities after successfully guiding Summit Tech through a period of transformation. Polite. Diplomatic. Fake. But I didn't care anymore. I sold the building 6 months later. A commercial real estate firm bought Anchor Properties, LLC for a price that made my accountant actually gasp on the phone. Summit Tech had to negotiate a new lease with the new owners. I heard it cost them double what they'd been paying me. I didn't feel bad. Derek reached out one last time. A short email. No subject line. Just, I'm sorry. I thought I was ready. I wasn't. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it without responding. Some apologies come too late. I started a new company a year later. Smaller. Focused. Mine. No board. No investors. Just me and a handful of people I trusted completely. We're building something different. Something sustainable. And this time I'm keeping everything in my name. Sometimes I drive past the old Summit Tech building. It looks the same from the outside. But I know what's inside now. The chaos. The broken trust. The slow rebuild. They took my title. They took my company. But I took something back they didn't even know I had, my power. And I used it exactly when it mattered most. I'm Catherine Walsh. I built something from nothing once. And I'll do it again on my own terms.